People are joining as we speak. So welcome everybody. Please let us know in the chat where you're from. Always good to have people here. Iris will get some tea and we'll get going in just a minute. It's Sunday evening in Israel. With weird rain today. Last couple of days has been a weird combination of hot, dust, and rain. Flash flooding warnings, I don't know, 85 degrees and then raining, very weird weather in Israel. I wonder if we can attribute it to global weirding. Hi people in Austin and Maryland and Brookline and Norway. Brookline, hi Annette. I will be in the Boston area on June 7th. Contact me afterwards if you want to meet up or something. We have a new executive director in the States, Rachel Kanar, replaced Robin Gordon. Rachel is based in Boston, in the Boston area. Robin was based out of the New York area, but in today's hybrid and remote workforces, doesn't really matter where we are. Our board is a national board in the United States. Our chairman is in Austin, and we have people from LA, New York area also, Connecticut, Maryland, Chicago, in California, and moving on to other places. So thanks everybody. Annette is actually Jeff Sussman. Well, Jeff, we'd like to, I'd love to see you in Boston. Anyway, It's been we've just passed the Shavuot holiday here. We've had sort of a slowdown in the political and security concerns that have been occupying every second of our time. Now we're just at a low burn on all of these things. Protests are still going on. The government is still moving forward with its plans, and we are just fighting for the environment. If Iris doesn't mention that today in her talk, we'll be asking her about that as well, because we got to keep our finger on the pulse, as we always have to do, with what are the government's plans, not just in terms of judicial reforms, and we've talked about that here, judicial reforms which could seriously harm our ability. The lack of an independent court system would very much harm our ability to protect the environment. But other than that, this government just passed a budget and a lot of laws, arrangement laws, which some of which are very problematic for us and many of which we managed to thwart. But anyway, we're 5 minutes after the hour now, or getting there. And I think we can get going, or we see people still coming in, but I think we can get going. Hello, Leon and Maggie. So nice. And yes, we all wish Iris the best in her new job. Well, I'm not sure there's a new job, but we will hear from that as well. I was just invited today. We had a farewell trip with Iris in the Jerusalem Hills today. We actually went to a lovely birding site. I'd never been before, a bird overlook at Shar Hagai, right in the center of the country. It was weirdly raining. And so there weren't many birds, but we got a great historical overview, and also from about the actual planning of that major intersection there at Shar Hagai. The one, Shar Hagai is where you turn right to Beit Shemesh if you're coming on Road 1 from Jerusalem. It's just before Shar Hagai, means the gate of the valley, and it's exactly where you start going uphill very steeply towards the Jerusalem Hills and towards Jerusalem. Anyway, that was a fascinating discussion. Iris, thank you for being here tonight and for sharing with us your thoughts, your sort of a summary of your 6.5 years. Where things were, where things are, how you see them, and what you've left your successor, Dan Alone, who takes over on June 4th, I believe. So thank you very much, David Amichai, also for back office here as usual. I'm Jay Shofet, by the way, and we are off to the races here with this live webinar. So Iris, let's share your screen, and we'd love to hear your summary.
Okay, so good evening or good morning for everybody. And thank you for participating in this webinar, which is very important personally to me and very exciting. Before sharing the screen, I wanted to say that I see all of you as partners to everything that has been done in the last 6.5 years. And especially I want to thank in the beginning to our friends and partners in SPNI, and to thank for the cooperation all over these years. I can't see you in the webinar. It's very frustrating that I can't see you, but I see what you write in the chat. I want to thank Leon, Russell, Robin, Jonathan, for really very significant cooperation all over these years. And that's it. I'll try to share first the screen, and then the main, where is the screen now? Oops, just a moment. To share a few of the main things that happened in the last 6.5 years. Now, just a moment. I lost it. I'll open it again. Just a moment. Okay. 1 minute. Okay. Can you see it?
Yes, it's full screen. It's great. Yeah.
Full screen? Okay. Yep. Okay, so I'll try to share thoughts on this last 6.5 years as CEO.
Iris, I'm sorry, Iris, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I forgot to say, if you have questions for Iris that you've already thought about, that you hear during the during her talk, please, you can write them in the question and answer or the chat if you can't find the Q&A feature. Thanks. Sorry, Iris.
No, it's okay. These 6.5 years have been very, how do I say it? Very busy years, very crazy years. Few of the years have been, every year was like 2 years at least. So I'll try to go over it. But first, I wanted to remind, you can see it, it's the second slide, it moves. Jay, does it move?
Yes, okay.
Yes,
we see it. Yep.
Okay. Sometimes it doesn't work in the first time. First to mention us, to remind what we are doing in the SPNI, our goals, our mission. First, we are independent, non-governmental NGO. I think I'm not objective, but we are the most important. Of course, we are the largest and the oldest environmental NGO in Israel. And our mission is to protect the open spaces, the biodiversity, the nature of Israel. We do it through activism, advocacy, and of course, for long-term education and ecotourism in our field school. And this is what we try to do the best in the last 6.5 years. This is our main goals. This is what we try to do in the last 6.5 years, like we've done in the previous 70, in the last 70 years. Protect Israeli nature and ecosystems. And I think, and I'll go to it later. The last point, let's say, if we look at the evolution of the nature protection, as we see it in this slide, the main thing all over the years is to protect open spaces. This is kind of a defensive work or advocacy to protect what we have. And we focus on continuous open spaces, eco corridors, and so on. But what we understood in the last few years, and we try to focus on this as well, is not only it's not enough to protect open spaces. We have also to ensure that the management of these open spaces will be sufficient as well, because open spaces, it's not enough. It's only the first step. And we have to ensure that these areas, these open spaces will be managed as well. And sometimes we have to protect these open spaces from initiatives that are overprotective, like forestation in open spaces that are not supposed to be forests. So the management of the open space is sometimes important, not less than the protection of these open spaces as open spaces. This is the second step in the evolution. And what we are trying to do now is another step in the evolution. And I think this is one of the most beautiful and important things that we have done in the last years, is go to rewilding, going not to only to protect and defend, but to be more initiative, to be positive, and to get back or to give back to nature places and spaces, open spaces that we ruined or we ruined in the last years, and now we are trying to give them back to nature. This is part of global efforts we know that it happens all over the world. To focus on this decade from 2020 till 2030, to get to a situation that we will not convert open spaces to development, and from 2030, at the end of the decade, till 2050, to get to a situation, to a position, or to a situation that will give back to nature and be in a net positive situation by rewilding and rehabilitation of habitats. So we'll go to it later, but I think in the evolution, this is one of the main success in the last few years. What happened in the last few years? A few external circumstances that we couldn't imagine at the end of if I go back 6.5 years, I couldn't imagine that this is what is going to happen, and this is what I'm going to meet in this time, in these years. First, we had in these 6.5 years, 5 national elections. Unstable political environment. You can see in the right, this is one of the ceremonies. 2 ministers for environmental protection. One is now, in position now, Tamar Zandberg, the previous one. But these 5 elections, it's not, what it caused to us is in 2 main levels. First, it stopped us, or it couldn't give us the opportunity to pass laws, to pass governmental decisions. Much of some of let's say that as a NGO, one of our main ways to create or to affect the reality, to change reality, is through advocacy. And we need the government as our partners. And in this last few years, we didn't have stable partners. And even to get a meeting, till the time, the few months that it gets to have a meeting with a minister or with the CEO of one of the ministerial ministries that we work with, it becomes irrelevant because everything changes so rapidly, so fast. So this is one level, and there are few laws that acts that we wanted to pass in the last few years that we just couldn't complete because of this unstable situation. This is one level. The other level is that part of our budget as NGO comes from the government, not especially, but mainly or just only for the educational work. And when we work with an unstable political situation, and there is no stable budget, and only now, which is at the end of May, we know what the budget, the governmental budget, will be for the coming years, for this year and the next year, you can plan anything, and you don't know what the budgets that you have that you will be able to use for the educational work. And this causes us as an NGO many troubles. So this is one situation that we have to cope with. Of course, we had COVID-19. No words to describe what we have to had to cope with. In one day, we had to stop everything that we do. All these lockups, we couldn't go outside, we couldn't do educational work, we couldn't do outdoor activities. We just had to go into a kind of lockout in the SPNI. We're an NGO, we don't have our budget, most of our budget, close to 70%, comes from self-generated income, and most of it comes from outdoor activities, educational activities, field school, and so on. And all of this was stopped in one day, and nobody knew. Now we can look back in nostalgia and a point of view, but we had kind of existential fears. We didn't know how it's going to end, if it's going to end. Nobody knew. And we had to fire people. We had to go into unpaid vacations and so on, and to shrink, to kind of slow down, and sometimes even to stop our activities. And it was very, very shaking. What you can see in the photo here down, you can see this is one of our projects, the COVID hotels. Some of three of our field school converted to Corona hotels, COVID hotels, and we hosted people that they were even not sick. They were, what was the name for it? I forgot. They were found positive for COVID, and they were isolated. Now we can just, joke about it, but it was very serious and very scary in these days. And I think that one of our success in this 6.5 years, it's not only to survive this crisis, and other NGOs didn't survive this crisis, but to overcome from this crisis even stronger and even more focused on our messages, on our professional messages, on the importance of nature for us, for our well-being, and the connection between nature and the climate crisis. And the COVID gave us time to focus on it and understand what we should do on these issues. I have to mention that all over the time of the COVID, the government, the planning, building, and committees didn't stop to work, and we have to continue. We had to continue our advocacy all over this time. So it doesn't mean that in the COVID, so we can say, okay, we're going to stop everything we do and go to, I don't know, to rest for the time till COVID go on. We had to continue some of our big part of our activities without the economic resources for these activities. One more thing from another direction, in 2018, at the end of April, there was a big tragedy of the flood in Nahal Tzafit in the south. And 10 youngsters from a mechina, it's kind of a gap year, just washed away and drowned in a flood in a Tzafit, Nahal Tzafit, the Tzafit stream. And this kind of shaked all over the country. And what happened since these days, it was a really great, very terrible tragedy. But since then, it's a kind of a trauma to all the outdoor activities, especially in the educational system, that we still feel till today. Every few drops of rain, all the educational system is kind of being stopped. Everybody is afraid to go outside, go to hike, even if it's safe. And we feel it very strongly in our educational activity. And many kids doesn't go to a hike, doesn't go to outdoor activities because of this kind of overprotecting of the system after this tragedy. Of course, there were global changes. All the world of employment changed from I don't know how to call it. It's a kind of a revolution or a kind of a very great change. And it's not people want to work from home. It's people choose, especially the youngsters, they choose, they don't come to work and stay for life. They change their job every few weeks, months, 2 years. If an employee stays in the same work for 2 years, is kind of close to be a veteran, I don't know. And we have to cope with it. We need professional employees in the SPNI. But as an employer, we feel that we have to change the world. We have to change the way we behave in this new environment. Of course, all this time in Israel, periods of high security tensions, and not only rockets and bombs from Gaza and from the north, and even in the last Passover, we had a kind of festival, a very nice festival in the Golan Heights, which usually is a very quiet area. And a few hours before the night, before the festival, thousands of people are supposed to take part in this festival, and 3 rockets landed in the Golan Heights from Syria. Now what we're going to do is and we're preparing for this festival for half a year. We're invested very deep in this festival. What is going to happen? Is it going to happen? Should we have to cancel it? So this is our life in Israel usually, but the last 6.5 years, we experienced few periods of high security tensions from outside, from Gaza, from Lebanon, from Syria, but also inside Israel, between Jews and Arabs, and inside the Arab society. And as a society that employ people from all the sectors, and we're very proud of it, we had to cope very sensitively through these very tense times and periods. And I can say proudly that we stayed very united in these periods, and it was not easy and not so easy. Here you can see a photo of our employees from one of our meetings or convention we had. And it's difficult to see it in the photo, but we have employees from all the sectors, and it's very nice in the SPNI. So the first steps 6.5 years ago was to focus in a new conversation, a new ongoing communication with it seems very I don't know, even I don't know, very regular things, or things that should not even be mentioned, but I started to run the SPNI after a kind of trauma, crisis in the SPNI, and it took time to build this relationship with all the units, all the employees. It took, I think, a year, close to a year, to build this face and this communication inside the SPNI. We redefined our main goals. We'll see these goals and focused on our plan in these goals. Now, it's important to say the SPNI is sometimes it's more close to a concern. We do many things. We do nature protection, we do education, we do a formal education, not formal education. We work with all the ages, we work with all the sectors. We have field schools, we do ecotourism, we work with the army, we do a trail marking, we work with the business, Teva Bees. We do so many things, and it's very nice. It gives us a lot of strength, but it's very difficult to explain. So what are you doing? And we try to focus and to define more closely, more precisely what we do into a few main goals, and we see it in the next slide. And it's important to say that all over these years, we focused and we invested, we improved the maintaining productive relationship with all our partners in the government, outside the government, in the environmental movement, which is very diverse. It's not easy. There are kinds of conflicts between different environmental beliefs, environmental focuses, environmental point of view. There are many NGOs, environmental NGOs in Israel. It's not so easy, and it's not easy to have a good relationship with one day the minister of environment that comes from Meretz, from the left wing, and the other day good relationship as well with Idit Silman that comes from the right wing. And so the ability to do it and to have good relationship with the two wings on the main goal for nature protection is something that we have to be very sensitive and very careful in the political situation of Israel. So as I said before, we try to focus on to define the main goals, protecting the marine environment, rehabilitation of rivers, which is a very great, very big issue that we focus in all in education, in advocacy, and so on. Of course, open spaces, which is the key way to protect nature, biodiversity all over the world, but in Israel, of course, in Israel. Startup Nature, which is a new project. I believe that most of you are familiar with Startup Nature. This goes to the new step that I mentioned at the beginning, not only to protect nature, not only to be a kind of in a defense situation, but to give back to nature and to be in a positive situation. Wildlife protection, of course, and of course, urban nature. We were pioneers in this, and the only ones that did this issue, worked in this issue 10 years ago, but now it's kind of national spread, and it's I see it as one of our success. And of course, climate crisis, which is I know that all the world is working and fighting climate crisis for many years. We went into this issue 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, and not unlike other things, there were many, not many, but few NGOs that worked on a climate crisis in the environmental movement in Israel. And we asked ourselves, what is the added value of the SPNI? And if we have to go into this issue. And we learned about it, we investigated, we learned about this issue very deeply, and we defined our part in this climate crisis issue. And what we found when we went into this, we found that all the conversation, all the discourse about this issue was about reducing emissions. And the slogan was 100% renewable energies, which is very important. But what we brought into the discussion, and I think we did it very successfully in Israel, is to focus on the understanding, or to lead the understanding that we can't or it's wrong to deal with climate crisis without understanding that the relationship, the deep relationship between nature protection and climate crisis. And the understanding that climate crisis is part of or is unseparable from the biodiversity crisis, this is our part in climate crisis issue. And it was the first steps was to convince this understanding inside the environmental movement. And now the slogan is 100% renewable energies without harming nature. And it's not so obvious and not so easy, it was not easy to do it inside the environmental movement in Israel. And the next step is to move on to decision makers and to bring them to situations that they understand, to understand that climate crisis is not a new environmental problem or a new environmental issue, that now we have to put aside all the other things that we do, and now we don't protect nature, we have to fight climate crisis. And understanding that fighting climate crisis or dealing with climate crisis is part of the big environmental and biodiversity issue, this is our goal. And we have professional work about it. We bring international knowledge about it. This is what we focus in the 2 COPs that we took part in, 26 in Glasgow and 27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. And this is the kind of message and work that we bring into the climate crisis issue in Israel. And I think that, you know, it's a global problem, it's a global issue, and there are decision makers in Israel that ask, Israel is so small, what can we do in this issue? And I think that we can lead in Israel the nature-based solutions and rehabilitate and what we do in startup nature, in rewilding, we can be a kind of beacon, for green beacon, for to all over the world, because we are a very dense country, and we have a unique nature, and we have to protect nature this way or another. And the way nature can be our ally in coping climate crisis, in mitigation and in adaptation, we can be leaders all over the world in this issue. And of course, all the educational work, educational tourism, ecotourism, and so on. Okay, so a few highlights from the last 6.5 years. I think I've talked about it here. It's written in few words, leading the public discourse on the connection between climate crisis and biodiversity. I mentioned it before. I think this is one of our main success in the last years. We still have a long way to go, but the first steps are here. We strengthened our status as educational tourism. It was not easy in these last years because of COVID, because of Tzafit tragedy, as I mentioned before, but we try to be more professional and more significant in our educational work. This is one more thing that we focused in the last few years. We made main changes in the work of the Israel Trails Committee, personal changes in the committee, and we try to, let's say, take back our leadership in this activity, because in the last few years, we are not the only ones on trail markings. It is not statutory. What we do is not statutory based in Israel, and everybody theoretically can go and get the agreement of the landowner and go and mark a trail wherever it wants in Israel. And there are a few initiatives to do such things in the last few years. And in the last few years, we tried to strengthen our public place or public role as the professional leaders in this issue of trails marking in Israel. It's not easy. And in the last few years, something else that we focused on is to deepen and to strengthen our relationship with similar NGOs abroad. In the last 2 years, few dozens of employees of the SPNI went to delegations, and delegations were delegations that came back here to Israel to study what other similar NGOs like us do in the all over the world. It's very important to keep us professional, to be leaders in nature protection, and it's very important for the employees to enjoy, to see what happens in the world, and we gave great focus on this issue as well. In the last few years, we did the first steps in changing the culture of cleanup. We got in the less than a year ago support grant to start doing it. It's a long way to go, but we are in the first step in this challenge. You can see the photo from the last Yom Ha'atzmaut, Independence Day. We were all over the country. It's a collaboration with the Azrieli Group, which is a very known real estate group in Israel. And there was a campaign even in TV and in all the media. And I hope that the government will take part in it and will be leaders in this campaign as well, because otherwise it's not going to happen. And of course, maybe the main challenge is to do what we do every day in the planning and building committees, in the government, in the municipalities, to keep struggling on every piece of open space in Israel. It's not easy because we are going to be the most dense country in the between the developed countries in the world. Rewilding, the next step, as I mentioned before, this is a Kfar Upin. In Kfar Upin, Amud Reservoir was a fish pond that was neglected, and now it's a natural habitat, a very nice and very attractive and very important one. And we're working on a national scale of such initiatives and such places. And we even now have as partners, and it's not, it's a very nice success that we convinced the land authority, Bureo, saying this is the word of the minister that is in charge of all over the lands in Israel, which is most of the lands in Israel is public owned, and they put nice resources, very important, significant resources to promote such initiatives all over the country. We tried for a few years, since my first day, literally my first day in the SPNI, to raise money from the government that built all the field schools from the 60s to the 80s. Unfortunately, because of the unstable political situation and all these elections and so on, we didn't get the support that we expected to get. And we realized that we had to do the renovation in our abilities. Maybe it's for good, because we do it very modest, very precise, to our size. And we invested in Engedi. This week we're gonna celebrate the new entrance to Engedi Field School. We invested in 21 rooms. You can see a photo from one of the rooms in Engedi, accommodation in Engedi. Mount Meron, thanks for generous support of Michelle. I don't know if she is here abroad. In Mount Hermon, בית ספר שדה חרמון field school in Golan, field school in Eilat. In all this field school we invested in the last few years, and we have plans for more field schools. The next challenge is Chatzeva, which is in a very bad situation. I didn't have enough time to raise resources for Chatzeva. It's going to go to this challenge, is going to go to Dan Alon, and I hope he's going to do better than me in to renovate Chatzeva. In the last few years, we built solar panels onto field schools, and we have also charging points in field schools, and more environmental norms, new norms in the field schools that we've done in the last few years. A few more things. We have new website which focus in Hebrew, which focus on the main core issues that I mentioned before. Now everybody that goes into our website don't see a kind of supermarkets with many things. We do this, we do this. He sees our 6 main goals, and all the things, all the activities focus and concentrated to these main goals. We have new website in English, which is very, very happy, very exciting and very important. And this coming year, we're going to have a new website in Arabic, which is a very, very exciting and very important that it's going to happen in the coming year. And the last few months, we made a very important change. We built kind of new department, which Gitit is running. Maybe a few of you met Gitit in one of the previous webinars. This new department is going to focus on advocacy and civil partnership. We have a long way to do in good and better work with the public in Israel, and this new department is going to focus on this goal. Personal thoughts, as I mentioned before, my connection with you is very important. I participated personally in few webinars. I met few of you in Israel, part of you abroad, and it's an opportunity for you to say thank you. I see, as I mentioned before, I see you as our partners to this so important goal to protect the nature of Israel, and to support what we do in the SPNI, which I believe I grew in the SPNI since I'm 18, and it is not 2 or 3 years ago, it's many years ago. And I believe that we do great work. We did great work all over these 70 years, and we have a lot of work to do, and to focus on the new challenges that we have. And as is written here, the Society of Protection of Nature in Israel, which is my home, professional and even more than professional home. It's a wonderful and vital organization, a very old one, but always young, and always generating, and it's an opportunity for me to say you all thank you, and to wish all the best for Dan Alon, which I believe that is going to do a great work. He's different than me, and it's important to do change every few years. And I'm sure that Dan Alon is going to take the SPNI to new worlds and to new goals, and to new summits. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Iris. Wow, that was great.
This is the new, our gap years volunteers.
The new cohort.
You can see me somewhere in between.
Right in the middle. This was one of your favorite things that you did in 6.5 years, meeting these kids every year, right?
Yes. It gave me all the time when I was desperate or tired. I met these youngsters and I get my energy back. It gives hope.
Because it takes you back to those days when you were there?
Also. But they are better, much better than I used to be.
What do you mean? How?
They are much more aware of environmental issues. They are much more mature. They are better.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear about that young generation, because I don't know, they're not showing up in the workforce so much. So I hope they're, So there's one question here. Well, I didn't see the question and answer. There's another one here, but there's one in the chat that I think I understand the question, which is, do we have a system of mitigation of urban development with creating new habitats? In other words, I think it was one of our strategies for mitigating the damage of urban development, creating urban nature. I think that's where I would go with that question. Is that one of or are they two separate? I mean, Gazelle Valley is actually an example of that. And, I don't know what else is going on in the urban nature department these days, but maybe you can speak to that as a planner also.
I think our mission or our role was to import the understanding or even the term urban nature to Israel. It was not, nobody knew what it is 10 or 15 years ago. We run the Gazelle Valley as a kind of model, and we host in this place people from all the country. We do surveys for urban nature in all the not all, but in many municipalities. It's a question, what is our role from now to the future? Should we, as NGO, run more Gazelle Valleys in every municipality? Should we don't own lands. So we don't have kind of added value or even the profession to run such areas. We do it very good as a model in the Gazelle Valley. I think that our mission or our goal is to bring other municipalities to adopt this model, to guide them, to give them the tools, to show them why it's important, how it should be done. I don't know if we have maybe in a few more places to run such areas, but it's not going to happen in a national scale only if it's dependent on our abilities. It should be adopted by the municipalities. I don't know if it's answered the question.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. And another question here, which I was going to ask anyway, which is about how do you feel about the new budget that was just passed, and it's the money that's devoted to environmental protection. The writer, Nancy Kaplan, says that she read that the money, the dollar amount is up, but it's split between the Environmental Protection Ministry, the Finance Ministry, and the Energy Ministry, and that some of the fine print is not good. What do you feel about that? And not just that budget question, but the larger issue of how this government has begun to deal with the environment.
First, I should say that the budget for environment in Israel all over the years is very low, and it should increase as we move to the future and the population grows and the problems are being bigger and so on. And instead of seeing that it's increased, it even shrinks. Now, when this government started, we had to fight back to back with the Ministry of Environment against a few initiatives to take more authorities from the Ministry of Environment. As a part of you, I think, knows, there was a plan to take the representative of the Minister of Environment from the building and the planning and building committees and to privatize this work. And it was pleaded from the fixing law. This is the name of Chok HaEsderim.
Arrangements law, the
arrangement law. It was pleaded from it only a few days ago. So we had to fight such a crazy initiative. And there was a plan that was frozen. Meanwhile, but I don't know when it's going to raise again, to take the green police from the Ministry of Environment to the new Ministry of, how does it call?
National Security.
National Security, which is very, very bad to take it from the Ministry of Environment. And there was another plan to take the green, הסיירת הירוקה, the green,
the patrol, the Green Patrol.
The Green Patrol from the Nature Protection Authority, Nature and Parks Authority, National Parks Authority, the NPA, to take it to the same ministry. So we had to fight so many ideas, which are very bad ideas. We succeed to stop most of them, but it's very sad that we have to fight in a new government. We have to fight to keep what we have instead of moving forward. This is what I should expect to see. So we're in a very bad situation, if I sum it to one sentence.
Okay, that's fair enough. You know, it's not fair, but it's enough.
That's what we have.
You know,
one more thing that we are very aware of is Katsa.
The EAPC, the Eilat Ashkelon Pipeline Company.
Yes, about Katsa, the previous government, the previous Minister for Environment, and all the government declared that they're not going to allow to increase the amount of oil that is being shipped through Katsa, from the Red Sea to the Mediterranean Sea. And we still don't know what is the policy of this government. We still don't know, and we are very afraid that they're going to reverse from the declaration of the previous government. And we know that Katsa push very hard that this government will allow them to increase the amount of oil that they are shipping.
Worrisome, and I'm sure I know that Dan and the team is having their finger on the pulse of what's going on, as is everybody concerned about marine protection of the coral reefs and the Red Sea. But speaking of this government and the previous government, just a personal thing we've never discussed. How proud were you that that in the previous government, the Minister of Environment hired your legal director to be her senior advisor and your lobbyist to be her government relations director? And imagine if they had been in that job for 4 years, how much different things could be already in the environmental picture.
First, they're not mine. They're the SPNI.
I know, but don't you feel, I swell with pride when I think about it,
Yes, I think that as an organization, we can be very proud of it because it means that we are considered, as NGO, as an organization, and as employees in the organization, that we are in the top of the professional knowledge of environmental protection. And it's not obvious as an NGO to be leaders in these professions. So yes, we're very proud of it.
Absolutely. In your presentation today, and I mentioned before the farewell birding and wine tasting tour that we did today in the Jerusalem Hills. I just saw in one of the slides, one of the pictures, I don't think it was in this presentation, but the slogan from one of the climate change parades, I think, that says, "Hateva l'shmirat hachevra." And I think that's an amazing slogan. In English, we'd say nature for the protection of society. And that's such a brilliant take on our name, which is clumsy. But if you turn our name around, I think it's just the perfect slogan. Or I don't know. I mean, I think we should almost consider a name change because it's so perfect.
Well, I'm very conservative. Much more conservative than maybe Sim. And I knew that in my time, I'm not going to touch the name and I'm not going to touch the logo. The logo, we changed the logo, but not very seriously. It's
we
the
tweaked
same.
it. Yes, we modernized it. It's good.
Yes, it's much more modernized, but no.
I mean, I want an animal.
Sounds funny. I think people like it.
Now that you're gone, we can.
Now when I'm gone,
we can retire the iris and find an animal with furry eyes. That's not, if you're a furry animal with big eyes, it's not the Nature and Parks Authority symbol. That's what my
try to do it. But as I said, I'm conservative, and I think there is a weight to heritage.
Yes, legacy, heritage.
It's legacy and heritage.
It's true.
Yes, and I don't know. People change now in this time. Things like change things, but it's nice that we have the same name and the same logo. And it's much more confusing in Hebrew because hachevra, it's company. It's the same word for company and society. Right. And we have to explain, החברה להגנת הטבע, it's not the company so we have to explain we are not חברה, we are organization, we are an NGO. So it's even much more complicated in English, in Hebrew. But it's so nice and not so naive, החברה להגנת הטבע. So it's nice, if you ask me, I have one more week to protect this name, leave it and do variations on the name, הטבע להגנת החברה. But
I hear you. I think that I don't think there's any changes immediately that are coming up. I think, well, we're about at the top of the hour. So, everybody wants to know, and you've already, first of all, I don't know, Iris, if you have a chance to look at these comments before David closes.
No, I have to focus.
People
speaking in English, and it's.
I'll talk for a second, and you can read in the chat because a lot of everybody's complimenting you.
Tada.
When I think there's another question. What I didn't mention at the beginning is I wanted to thank so much our board members in the US and in Canada, our affiliates, Nature Israel, we call them. They call themselves both in the US and in Canada, and in the UK as well, UK Society for the Protection of Nature in Israel. And I'm just chuckling because I'm reading this last question you were being asked. It sounds like I wrote it. No, it's I think it's a political question. We don't need to. You're certainly not a spokesperson for Edith Silman. Anyway, so thank you very much. I was just going to ask you now if you had a chance to read them. And before we go, people want to know, what are your plans?
Well, I still don't know. I know that a few days after Dan is gonna take the leading of the SPNI, I'm gonna go to visit my brother in New York, which I didn't meet for 5 years, and from there I'm gonna continue to Scotland for 2.5 weeks to relax. To clean my head. I don't know how you say in English, to clean my head.
Clear your head.
Clear my head, okay. And then I still don't know. I'm checking a few possibilities. What I know for sure, you're not going to find me in ICL, you're not going to find me in Chevron. I'm going to stay in the environment. I don't know if
ICL is the Israel Chemicals. You're not moving to the corporate sector, and particularly not the polluting sector. Yeah.
No, I'm going to stay. It has double meaning in Hebrew. I don't know if in English as well. I'm going to stay in the environment.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to stay in the branja, we say. I guess that's Hebrew or something.
No, in Hebrew, it's אני אשאר בסביבה, which means...
I know. Yes, it's a good double entendre in English as well. Yeah. No, you really, I mean, you know, on behalf of everybody, I want to thank you for this webinar and, you know, your willingness to do these webinars and to meet our supporters in the States and Canada and in Israel when they're here. Thank you very, very much. And thanks for being such an incredibly important voice in the environmental movement and in the wider environmental policy community. And really because, I mean, you are so knowledgeable and experienced and wise in matters of land use planning, which is, you know, in 3 words, the core of what we do and what is needed to be at the core of how you protect the environment. That is the environment, land use planning and even sea use planning, because now we chart out and we've advocated for marine reserves. But land use planning is the core of it. And there's few people in Israel more knowledgeable about land use planning as it relates to the environment. So, and also from the legal perspective. So thank you very much. It was personally a pleasure. Maybe we'll have you back in a year or so and catch up.
As a guest.
Yeah. David, let's do that. Thank you very much, David, Amichai. Thank you, Iris. Thanks to everybody who's still here and who was with us for this entire last hour. And we'll see you, everybody, I believe, the 11th of June with Rachel Kanar, our new director in the States, and she'll be talking about a vision for Nature Israel. So that's our affiliate abroad. So thank you, Iris. Thank you, David. Everybody participated, and good evening, good afternoon. We'll see you soon. Bye.